It was about this time that I visited Edgar again and told him of my intention to climb Mount Everest. He didn't flinch, though when I told him I also intended to meditate on God's existence and find a proof for him while pushing my way up Everest, he burst out laughing. He laughed like this. Ah-ooh, ah-ooh. A ray of sunshine came through the stained glass window which had been repaired after Sophie Alderson's first attempt on Edgar's life. The stained glass window, which had originally shown St. George killing the dragon, now had a giant blue question mark on a white background. The stained glass window was also now bulletproof. I told Edgar if I had time to think about it properly, I was sure a proof of God would come to my infinity chip. Edgar laughed out loud again, and banged his left fist on his desk a number of times. Nuts have been searching for a proof of God's existence for thousands of years. There isn't one. Reason isn't behind your belief in God. Reason isn't really behind anyone's belief in God. It's faith, completely blind faith. What I do here, my occupation, the taking of metaphysical bets, is the practical demonstration of just how nutty you people are. Do you know what blind faith is? After what happened to my family, I gave this question a lot of thought. When Winboism, the cult I made up for a joke in my college days, became a recognized religion with an estimated 20,000 believers, I gave it some more thought. When I discovered it was possible to take large sums of money off the religiously inclined, I wondered some more. What, when you pull away all the bullshit, all the lies, is at the heart of the religious endeavour? What is it that makes the nuts tick? Edgar, getting quite excited, began pushing me around the room. I'll tell you. Desire. Blind faith is just the desire for something to be the case. The only thing that guides us in metaphysics is our desire, and thus blind faith is nothing more but concealed wish fulfillment. You believe in your funny God for one reason: you want to believe. Having blind faith in God is no different to saying that you would like it very, very much if there were a God. But, my little theist shopping conveyance, the fact that you would like it very, very much if there was a God makes not a squidgen of a difference to whether there actually is a God, does it? Not a squidgen. It doesn't change things one little bit. So you want a God to give life meaning? Well, so fucking what? And that's not all, I'm afraid. Not that that isn't bad enough, of course. But your blind faith in your funny God will, if I'm not very much mistaken, push you slowly down the kaleidoscope-coloured furry slide of madness. Edgar stood up. Confusing a wish with a belief, you see, blurs the distinction between desires and reasons and invariably leads to insanity. I should know. I've seen some really bad cases. The light in their eyes has gone out. It's all very sad. Tragic, really. Really religious people look as if they've been masturbating like Billy-O. They even walk funny. They're really bad nuts. At this point, I told Edgar Malroy to shut up. I told him he was wrong about my belief in God. I told him I would find proof of God on Mount Everest, a cast-iron impregnable reason for my belief in God, and Edgar would have to admit he had made the biggest mistake of his life. It was then that Edgar told me about Maurice Wilson and arranged for me to fly to the Himalayas. I left the next day. Shop-a-lot reported me stolen. Maurice Wilson was born in Bradford, Yorkshire in 1898. During World War I, he was shot twice by a German machine gun in the Third Battle of Ypres. One bullet hit his left arm, the other bullet punctured his lung. The wound made a sss noise as his right lung collapsed. He got better. The inventor of the machine gun, Dr. R. Gatling, also invented a machine for sowing rice. And it was from this rice sowing machine that he got the idea for the machine gun. Maurice Wilson believed that if you fast for 35 days, subsisting on sips of water and pray to God, then you could do anything. He attempted to climb Mount Everest to publicise this belief. His plan was to crash land a plane on the side of Everest and walk the rest of the way to the summit. He took off from the London Aero Club, flew rather badly across Europe and the Middle East, and finally arrived in India, where the local authorities promptly impounded his plane, regarding him as a maniac. Then the monsoon came. Wilson fasted for 35 days, subsisting on sips of water, and prayed to God. At the end of the 35 days of fasting, Wilson felt incredibly weak, got a cold, and decided to go home. The metaphysical betting business went from strength to strength. If a nut could think it up, and if it couldn't be proven one way or the other, Edgar Malroy would take the bet. The poor girls who worked at the booths occasionally experienced what Edgar termed metaphysical burnout, or MBO, with symptoms rather like a migraine but far worse. When a burnout took place, the booth would be closed and the girl would be carried on a special stretcher to a staff room, where she would be coached back to normality by Edgar Malroy, who had developed a special technique for dealing with MBO cases. He called the technique the Often the was so successful that the MBO victim would be back at her booth in a few hours. Those cases that proved to be more serious were looked after in a special care centre Edgar had set up in near Brighton. There was an average of one serious MBO a week. This sort of figure was hardly surprising given the metaphysical nonsense the staff of the two betting shops were exposed to. Looking back, it was pathetic. Even at this point, there were a few cases of the metaphysicians themselves suffering from MBO, and this led Edgar Malroy to form Metaphysical Betting Anonymous, an informal group that in the early days numbered less than a dozen, met with Edgar at 4:30 on Tuesdays and discussed their obsession with meaningless assertions.